Check podcasts.
The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Kalen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast. Hi, Sam. How are you?
Good morning, Kalen. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
You actually look fresh.
Do I?
Looks like you had a good night's sleep last night.
I woke up an hour before I usually do. I'm a 4 o'clock early morning riser. I woke up at 3 o'clock this morning. I'm like, I got to go back to bed. But I'm like, is it worth it? Is it worth going back to bed for an hour?
Yes.
Because really, by the time I get back to sleep, it's going to be 45 minutes. And then I'll just wake up more tired. But anyway.
It's worth it. They say as long as you're closing your eyes or resting, it's better than not. Like, if you can't get a sleep, at least close your eyes and rest, even if your brain is kind of working.
I live most of my daylight hours like that, so I guess I'm doing pretty good, huh?
You are doing good. It's funny because this morning, I went back to bed. So to answer your question, I got up, and I thought it was an hour later than it was. And my wife gets up to go to work. I heard her up, and I'm like, all I had in my mind is I have to take out the recycling garbage. Because that's our little battle with each other. And so I got up, and I was so tired. And I looked, and I thought, oh, wow, it's only 6:45. So I was planning to get up around 8 or 7:45. So I was able to do that and then go back to bed.
Wow, you did chores and then went back to bed?
Yeah, but I just rested. I just rested my eyes.
As soon as my feet touch the floor, I'm up.
Yeah. No, that's typically me too. But yeah, I'm disproportionately fatigued these days, so I need to make as much sleep as I can.
You know, having a taxing brain will make you sleepy.
Yes.
Or having things tax your brain.
Yeah,
will
exactly.
Make you sleepy. I'm not saying that you have a taxing brain.
I have a very taxing brain. You know what I like when I have a taxing brain is to have discussions with really smart people.
Oh, really?
To help figure out how I can navigate these challenges in business.
Before you say who it is, I'm going to see if you can guess who the secret guest is from this quote that I dug up. It's not, I don't think it's a quote by this person, but it was reflected towards her. Now you've got half of it.
Okay, it's a her.
If you have good thoughts, they will shine out of your face like sunbeams, and you will always look lovely.
Oh, it's amazing.
I know. No, that's Teresa Ito.
Teresa Ito from Blue Mountain Solutions.
Yeah.
Hi, welcome to the show,
Thank
Teresa.
you.
Thank you for coming on. We've worked together in the past, and I think you're amazing. Your company's amazing. What you offer is amazing. And I think, we'll get into the details of what you do, but when you're in business and you're trying to grow something, a lot of people think the cost of getting some help and consultancy is cost prohibitive, or they don't want to spend the money. And I was of that ilk, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 7 years ago even. And we did some work with Blue Mountain Solutions. We also did some work with BDC, the Business Development Bank has a consulting arm as well. And the value that we've received from both organizations and paying to do that service is invaluable. So,
fantastic.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. So, Teresa, talk about yourself. How are you?
I'm great. I'm wonderful. Thank you. Here we are, closing the summer of 2024.
Oh, my goodness.
It's been fantastic, terrific.
Yeah. How is business in general? And maybe describe a little bit about what your business does.
Sure. So ultimately, we develop leaders primarily in hospitality because that's where most of us in the company come from. And that's where majority of our business comes, hospitality and tourism. But we develop leaders internationally to really have the skills, equip them with the skills and knowledge to really care for the people that they lead. That's ultimately what we do.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And you sowed your oats in the hospitality, if I'm not mistaken, in Jamaica?
Yeah.
Is that where you got your start?
Yeah, well, I was born and raised in Jamaica. I'm Jamaican, born and raised. I moved to England when I was 12. So once I finished high school, I went into hospitality in England, moved to London, and I was so proud of myself. I'd done 3 years, got 2 diplomas. Don't have a degree in hospitality, but I had 2 diplomas, and I had my name tag that said trainee manager.
Oh.
So yeah, so there I was, green around the edges.
You've arrived.
Yeah, my 3-star hotel in London, and I walked in to the front door and I introduced myself, and the gentleman on the other side looked over his glass at me and said, "Did you just walk in the front door of the hotel?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "You just walked in?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "Don't ever do that again. You go back out on the street, you go round the side, and you go in where it says staff only.
Ooh.
You are not permitted to walk in where the guests walk." And I was just mortified. It was my first step into hospitality, and I'd fallen flat on my face. You know, I was like, oh.
You
all of
thought you'd
19.
fallen flat on your face.
Yeah.
But
But
you fell
maybe-
right through the front door on
Well,
your face.
maybe it gave you a better understanding of what true hospitality is.
That's right.
Right?
Oh, man.
So I found myself, going in through the staff only,
Yeah.
and typical of London, all the heart of house areas are underground, so 3 floors down, and found my way to an office where they were at least expecting me, to which I told them who I was. And these 2 women rocked back on their chairs, looked me up and down and said, "Oh, really, you're the new trainee manager? Well, darling, you better tie back your big fuzzy hair and kick off those high shoes, because you're going to be cleaning public area toilets for 6 months. Are you ready?" And I said, "Yes, I am."
That's a good answer.
And I tell you, those first months of being in hospitality, I had the finest training from women I thought were really old, because they were in their 40s.
Yeah. Well,
my
hey,
goodness.
listen.
And I was so young.
old.
But they were amazing. They totally knocked me into shape. They told me, "You can't lift like that, and you don't leave your trolley like that, and this is how you speak to guests." They were really bossy and absolutely the most amazing trainers I've come across. They were public area cleaners and had been all their lives, and they were just fantastic. And I just knew I had found, honestly, my place in life was in hospitality. So
And hotels in particular, I guess.
Yes.
For the first part of your
yes,
career, right?
yeah, definitely. I just loved the variety of the hotel industry, and I loved the fact that it could tie into my love for travel. So I worked in London, and I moved around to all the different departments within hotels, and found the ones that I really, really loved. And then, so after having some getting experience in different hotels, I moved to the US, got some experience in hotels there. And then I moved back to Jamaica in my mid-20s and worked for Sandals Resorts. So I moved home. And I had a great 7 years with this Jamaican-owned company.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, and became their first female resident manager and their first female general manager.
Wow.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
Huge.
I loved it.
Kind of transformative a bit.
Yeah.
How many years ago would that have been?
Oh, that was
Really?
1991.
Oh, wow.
So a couple.
Wow.
I'm
a few
aging
years
myself
ago.
there. Yeah.
But touching on your first experience in the hotel and going down the 3 floors and being greeted, and you're gonna clean toilets. Do you see? I mean, that's kind of an old school
It is.
or perceived older school way of initiation.
Yeah.
And the discipline of it, and being kind of like, no, you're not doing that. No, you're not doing that. And you're like, oh, it's not obviously for everybody. Like,
No.
how does that compare to styles today that you encounter? Like, I mean, I ask this because our team, like, I think of Joe Zambri,
Yeah.
and she's like lovely beyond words,
Yeah.
but she has a similar sort of old school.
Yes.
Like, no, don't do it like that. Do it like this.
Yes.
And then you kind of figure out why. You know, it's not like, I mean, she does a good job of explaining sometimes, but it's more about like just the fact, just do it.
Yes.
You'll figure out why later, kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think in 2024, we understand that the team members that we're hiring, the colleagues that we're hiring, are choosing where they want to work. They are looking for a place that has purpose and is aligned with them. And it's about bloody time. It's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that, because people aren't just going to do exactly what you tell them to do. They have a voice. They understand that. And to be honest, that makes us richer. That makes us more diverse, because if people are going to share their ideas with us, then we have an opportunity of changing things for the better. So I definitely think that I love assertive leaders who are able to, like Joe, and I've seen her in action and I admire her style. I do believe there is a right way of doing that. And I coach and train leaders to not use words like, if you don't mind, I'd like it to be done this way. Or, yes, I think it would be better. No, we have to be very clear with what we want to be done. We have the experience and there is a reason. And initially it's going to be these are the steps to do it. And often we're challenged like, oh, as long as we get it done. No. There's a reason why we follow an opening checklist or a closing checklist or how to order steps by, and that we have the experience. So I'm really keen for clear communication around that, and it will set us free. Yeah.
Good communication always sets us free because it clears the air.
That's right.
Well, I think that's kind of what's, in this day and age of trying to figure out what's politically correct or what the new way of training and learning is. I think we forget that sometimes the best, clearest communication is just telling it like it is.
Yeah.
And not worrying so much about the feelings around it or how it lands. I think part of that is, I guess that's the challenge, is trying to bridge that. So, when people are used to being talked to a certain way, where it's like, well, perhaps we want to try it like this. Right. And then that's what they're used to. But when they hear, do it like this, there's a reason why we're going to do it. We'll tell you why later if you don't figure it out. But just do it this way. I've got 30 years of experience or whatever, and this is the way it's going to be done.
It takes all the ambiguity out of what you need done.
Well, I think it also, for us, I think it also breeds a certain type of person that can handle that.
Right.
Because if you're going to be working in an organization that has that sort of style, you can look at it like, oh, I don't want, and we've definitely had over the years people that have said that, like, oh, like this is too strict, or this is too, doctrine, being brought down on me and things like that. But then the ones that do get it, I mean, we have people have lasted 15 years in the organization. They love it and all of that. So it's not for everybody, I guess, that style. But
we also know for a fact that the finest teams, the teams that are most productive and happiest at work, are when we're really clear with what their areas of responsibility are. And it sounds nearly counterproductive, like, well, but by being very clear about this is your area, people really, really try their hardest. And I believe that most people come to work to try their hardest, to do their best. We just have to be clear about what their boundaries are. And then after that, they will offer to help.
Yeah.
But they also know that this is their responsibility. It's when we're sort of, oh, if you can get to that, please, that would be nice. That's not an
clear.
option.
Yeah.
We're actually telling them that it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And then we're the ones that get twisted and bent out of shape when it's not done on time, because we haven't been clear saying, Kaylin, I'd really like that report. I need that report before tomorrow. So 5 o'clock, how does that look for you? Pause, wait for a response, and then be very clear with, okay, please send me an email when it's ready and I'll go into the shared drive or whatever we have to do.
Yeah.
But people are sort of saying, I know you're busy, but why do we start with that?
Yeah.
Now I've just given you the excuse that you're going to. No.
When you're validating like an ineffective result, because you're basically saying, like, if you have time, well, I don't have time today, and maybe so you also give away your control.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
And it really doesn't feel very authentic. And I think you probably like to teach people to be leaders through authenticity, right?
100%. Yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah. And also that's a change in 2024, is as leaders, we are encouraged to be vulnerable. Well, that takes some adapting for people like myself who have been, in hospitality and leadership since the 80s, talk about being authentic, showing your real self. That's stretching us. But we know that that's how we're able to really allow people to come in and connect with us. So, I'm up for some new tricks.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other thing too, for me, as you're talking, at some point there's going to be clear communication. So why not put it at the front instead of at the end?
Yeah.
Because if you're frustrated, you're going to be very clear
Yeah.
at some point. Even the most passive person will eventually say, hey, this is not working out.
Yes.
And then the other person will be like, well, I thought it was working out perfect, because of that lack of clear communication. So at some point, you're going to know that you're going to have to be a clear communicator, either firing them or do it at the beginning.
and understanding that it is two-way,
Right.
that I will give you feedback, but I also expect feedback in return.
Yeah.
And there are different ways we can make sure that people who report to us give us feedback, because of
Yeah.
course they're a little bit more timid sometimes to do that. But if you create a culture where feedback is what we thrive upon, then I'm going to find reasons to constantly
Yeah.
give you feedback. And naturally, 80% of that's going to be positive because there's so much you're getting right.
Yeah.
And then when I speak to you about whatever percentage it is that isn't, you're going to be a lot more receptive to my suggestions or my directives.
Yeah.
That's okay.
And it gives you
No,
that
I like
that opportunity to communicate. Or it sounds funny, but sometimes when you're not communicating well, then there's just that communication gap.
Yeah.
And if you're creating an environment where there is an open dialogue, you're going to be having opportunities to communicate and course correct and also learn
Yes.
on both sides.
On both
right?
sides.
I had a manager recently message me to say how bad we did in supporting a certain store.
Right.
And I was like, my reaction, and I don't know, I'm going to toot my own horn here, but I was just like thrilled that A, she had the voice and the confidence to say it. B, she used we, even though it was us, or me in particular as the leader of the organization failed. I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, like wholeheartedly. So let's learn from this.
Yes.
But to have that type of person,
Yeah.
you know, it was like, wow, okay, that's the kind of leader you want, especially if you've got a team. You know, if it's just you and you're one person,
Yeah.
then obviously communication is key. But having a team that's kind of got your back like that, but also
Yes.
can call you out
Oh, yeah.
and feel safe enough that I'm not going to go.
Yeah. That's right.
You know,
That's right.
sometimes I do that, but when instantly I was like, yeah, she's right.
Yeah. But back,
know?
back to what Sam said about being authentic. This is really important. And in difficult conversations, I encourage and coach leaders to say things like, Sam, I'm nervous about this conversation this morning because our relationship really matters, or I'm disappointed that we're having to talk about the same issue again
Yeah.
today. And I just want, so in other words, declaring how you're feeling rather than coming in like I have it all
Yeah.
prepared. Well, that I'm actually feeling really, it's weighing heavily on me if I'm being truthful, And
Yeah.
I think when we start off with my intention today is to, then people aren't left hanging like,
Yeah.
where are we going with this? My intention is to make it really clear what our roles are, or where I feel that you dropped the ball or we dropped the ball, and how we can go forward.
Yeah.
And then the person goes, okay, good. That's what this is about. And then they're far much more open
Yeah.
to then listen to, because they're not expecting at the end of it. And I go, right, so there you go now. You're suspended.
Yeah. Or you're fired
Right.
or you're whatever.
Yeah.
Set the clear, purpose of the communication. And sometimes it ends up in that other area, but
That's
at least you're being honest with yourself and also with them. And then it creates the opportunity for dialogue.
Yes.
Well, and if you're not being authentic as the boss, you come across as it's not two people talking to
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
It's one person of a higher authority
Yes.
talking to someone else.
Yeah.
And
Corporate or cold
Yeah,
or-
and
yeah.
that doesn't ever
no.
seem to work well.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work for a guy like me, that's for sure. I got when you were talking about walking through the front door of your first job
Mm-hmm.
in London at a hotel, and I think about all your hotel work, both here and abroad. I can't help. Have you ever watched the TV show? And this is not part of the podcast. We can edit this out. But have you ever
Unfortunately, it
watched?
is a part of the podcast.
Oh man!
I'm
We're
curious
doing this
now.
live.
Yeah, this is like the Family Guy where they do those little
right?
outtakes.
Outtakes. Well,
Yeah.
this is definitely outtakes.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the TV show Hotel Babylon?
Yes, I have.
Oh
I
man,
watched it,
you
yeah.
you just your story and your story
Right.
reminds me of that so much.
Right.
And going down 3 floors
Yes.
to like the heart of the hotel, and man, have you ever seen Hotel Babylon?
I did, yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
show.
It's cool.
I think
Yeah.
I read it before it became. I'm pretty sure I read it as
Was
a
it a
book
book? Yeah.
before. Yeah.
Okay, I'm
Before,
gonna have
yeah.
to look at.
Yeah.
No, I have to look that up because one of my favorite TV shows that I
Yeah.
find very hard to stream live. I can't find it anywhere.
There's ways
ways
to
and
find it.
means.
Yeah, there's ways and
I
means. You
am.
can get it.
I'm so
It's
legal.
called Google.
Okay.
It's right on your screen.
Anyway, I figured you must know
Yes.
that.
Yes.
So you find yourself in Jamaica. You're working for Sands.
Sandals.
Sandals.
That's okay.
You're not working for Sands. Sands is,
Sands
not-
is a funeral home, isn't
No,
it?
well, it is,
It
but
is
there's
here.
a Sands.
Good hospitality potential.
It's a casino
There.
group that's owned by, or was owned, or is still owned by a family that isn't.
Lovely.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
The
they're
Gotti
not-
family.
well, they're just they're not good. But
yes.
So you're at Sandals.
So I was at Sandals for 7 years. During that time, I had my beautiful 2 daughters, Holly and Kate.
oh, amazing.
Yeah, and then my husband at the time, my first husband, decided it was time for us to move back to England. He's English, so we moved back to England, and we're living there with. So I had a 4-year-old and a 9-month-old, and I thought,
Oh, wow.
okay, there was such a huge difference between what I had been delivering in this really high quality, really engaged team service with a Jamaican owned company that was growing and developing to what I found service to be in England. I was living in Cambridge. And I thought, wow, I can really see clearly what they could do to.
Yeah.
So
improve.
it all just came out. It came out in ultimately what ended up being, after 6 months, of 4 full days of leadership development. It broke down into 4 full days, and then 4 half days of customer service essential skills. So that what was built in the year 2000, and I launched the company in the year 2000 in England, was something that I created, which were the steps to being a great leader, and delivered 1 full day a month for 4 months, so that you would have 1 full day of training, and then you would implement that. We check in with you independently, all the 12 people who are on the course, and then you do part 2, which layers on to part 1.
So you don't go back. You just move forward for those 4.
That's right.
4 different.
So part
different-
1 is about, have you got your head around being a leader? Like, it starts with you inside, you know, and your actions as a person is quite personal. Part 1, I love it. And they're just like, wow, holy cow, I had no idea. I thought we were going to talk about making other people do things. You're like, yeah, that's not until part 3, because part 2 is about productivity. So it's the skills that we bring to work, how we manage our time, how we manage ourselves, how we communicate, how we handle complaints, implement change. So that's all, again, very much your skills as a leader. Part 3 is when we start talking about your teams, how we communicate with them, team meetings, pre-shift briefings, emails that go out, how often you put your schedule out, all that really practical stuff. And then part 4 is, once you've got part 1, 2, and 3 all sewn in, part 4 is really how you turbo boost the business. So it's how you really look at everybody you have on your team and find their best potential and how they can play out in this place called work. And they can have so much more fun. You can, through performance reviews, through mentorship, and also the side of upselling. You know, I eat out probably 3 times a week. God, I love food. And married to tack, I'm just such a lucky
I know,
woman.
but yeah, you look like you just ran a marathon. Like you're fit as a fiddle.
Yeah, no. You know, when I think I eat out 3 times a week, and probably twice a year, at the end of the meal, they'll put the dessert menu down and say, here's the dessert menu, I'll leave it with you. What do they do the other 9 times? Is they say, would you like to see the dessert menu? Don't ask me that.
No.
Yeah.
So this is something that we go through when we develop teams, is don't ask that question, because I have all my willpower intact.
Yeah.
I haven't, but you put it down and I see how well worded it is, how people like Joe Zambri have gone over with the chef to create this really delightful thing, priced correctly, a lovely balance of chocolate and this and fruit and light. And once I see that, I can't help but go, oh, Lord, they have this, you know.
And if they
I must
ask
have
you a question like, would you like to see the menu? You've got the opportunity to
say
say no. And
Yeah, and they have to listen.
Yeah.
Why give your
Yeah.
customer the opportunity to
So
say
we always
no?
say, just put it down.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
if you say nothing, it's better. But
Yeah.
just put it down.
And maybe
the
make a
best
suggestion
part-
like,
can,
Yeah,
can
the
I
best-
point
This is
out
my
the
favorite
shortbread?
dish.
It's
yeah,
my
you
favorite.
can point
Yeah.
out the shortbread.
Yeah,
for
the shortbread
sure.
we have here is fantastic.
So
Yeah.
again, by putting it down and
Yeah.
saying it, and then we always say, again, back to being authentic, is that server or busser, whoever it is that's putting down that menu, would just say, by the way, that shortbread is an English recipe. It's my favorite on the menu. And you can't help but our minds immediately go to,
Yeah.
well, what's my favorite then? You know?
Yeah.
And so it's small things like that that make an amazing difference to the bottom line.
Yeah.
And I've seen it work.
Yeah.
Places like Pizzeria Prima Strada,
Yeah.
you know, when they put in their retail sales of, thank goodness, I can now buy gelato and pizza to take home and meatballs and all the rest. But the fact that the team just needed to say at the end of the meal, when again, they put down the dessert menu, if someone says, oh no, I'm too full, all we coach them to say is, okay, well, you know, on your way out, you can pick up, you know, a pint of the hazelnut sorbet, which makes me want to just eat it right now.
it's so
It's
good.
so good. Jen is so good in the production kitchen of Pizza Prima Strada. But just that one thing makes such a difference to it and increased their retail sales by 56% when we started doing it. We measured it.
Yeah.
Because we love measurables.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is getting the data. So when you're coming, so you're in England,
Yes.
and I would imagine, like you think, I mean, obviously, you know, we're similar ages, and you know, early 2000s. Like I would imagine. I mean, I was in England doing work early 2000s,
Right.
and it was still that traditional sort of British kind of service.
Yes.
Was there a bunch of resistance? Were your ideas embraced? Like,
You
how
know,
did you feel?
It's
that worked out?
interesting. I think if you approach things in an authentic manner, you figure out quite quickly who you're, especially when I was starting the business in the year 2000, right? You find out quite quickly what your ideal client is, you know, and it's not the big corporate ones and it's not the tiny little ones either. So you find yourself in that mid group, average size hotel, and that was hotels and pubs were and the pubs were going to gastropubs in those days. So Charles Wells, who's a great big brewer in the east of England, had me develop all their teams and all their gastropubs, because they were literally going from standing on the other side serving pints and crisps to all of a sudden they had food, like proper
menu.
food on
They're
the
not
table.
having to microwave a pie for the customer,
and
right?
it was proper food, and
Yeah.
it was so they just wanted to make it really great service, friendly service. So so it's really, I really enjoyed that. You just find your ideal client, I think, and I've never had to advertise a day in my life.
Wow, that's
yeah. So 8 years in England, and then we've been running here for 9 years in Canada. So
wow. So did you just keep that? You just went global? Did you just keep the sort of like?
Well,
do you still do work in England? For clients? Yeah.
Oh yeah, England, Jamaica, Mexico, and there's something coming in the US. Hasn't got there yet, but. Without a doubt. So when we started in England, I wanted to keep it local because the children were young, and one of them needed lots of medical care. So I knew I wanted to be the primary carer, and I knew the best way to do that was to run my own business and control my own calendar. So it was a big part of that. So I stayed pretty much in the east of England, which included London, North London.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was enough business. It was just me in those days. So I did that for 8 years until I came on holiday to Canada. What were we thinking?
Holiday in Canada.
Just a holiday.
Yeah, just a holiday, and you never left.
In 2007, we came on a holiday. So again, with my ex-husband and our 2 young children, they were 10 and 14. And we felt this draw, honestly, when we were on the cruise ship coming from Vancouver to Victoria. And I mean BC ferries when I say that. Because if you know the English ferries to France, that's a ferry. This is a cruise ship.
It is. I'm waiting for the casino on BC Ferries to
No
show
kidding.
up.
So, coming over here, we felt this draw and this welcome, and we weren't looking for somewhere to move. The children were in school.
Yeah.
We were thriving. Our families, his family was all there. Half of my family's there, half my family in Jamaica. We were very settled, but boy, coming to Victoria, it was day 3 that, we looked at each other and said, why don't we live here? And it was that morning the children ran into the bedroom and said, Mom, Dad, we really want to move to Canada. Can we move to Canada? And I
Really?
said, oh, if they
Everyone
want
was
to.
on board.
It's possible.
Yeah. And that was a year, day less than a year, is when all 4 of us moved here permanently.
That's
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
Just from your visit.
We came for a visit,
Yeah.
and then we knew going back that that we would be moving here.
Yeah.
We just didn't know how we would do that. So by the time we got back, I investigated everything, and we thought it should be through an agent. It's going to be more expensive, but we'll get there quicker.
Yeah.
And we recognized that the best way to do it was through a work permit, because on the BC, was hospitality. What was it? Hospitality leader, hotel manager with over 10 years of 5-star experience. So I was like,
hello.
that's
That's
me.
me.
So the
Yeah.
agent said, so I said, great, what do we do now? And he said, well, you need to go and find a job. And I said, oh, in Canada? He said, yeah. Right. So we came back in the December, and I interviewed at all the properties, and the Empress said, great, when can you start? And I said, what?
Wow, that
It's
easy.
really happening.
Yeah. And I said, but you haven't actually posted a job. And they said, yeah, but we're supposed to, our role is to talent spot, and
Right.
you can't work for anyone else in the city
Yeah.
but us. So I started, at the Fairmont Empress.
See, that's an interesting comment, talent spot. Mm-hmm. And I think, people often don't look for new talent when
Right.
they have no vacancies.
Yes.
Versus looking for talent, period.
Right.
And then evaluating their team and
Yes.
finding how to exit somebody perhaps
Yeah.
or create a position that maybe they didn't even know they needed because of
Yes.
the person that's that talented.
Yeah. So
It's so important, I think, to do that.
yeah. And even within your company, I feel that within companies,
Yes. Yeah.
we need to be, I think that's the role of the CEO, GM, whatever the senior positions are called in any company. Your role is to know who you've got on the team and how are you helping to grow them.
Yeah.
And that might be within the business, it might be within a different channel that they have in mind, but how are we offering them opportunities? Because that's how they're going to stay with you.
Totally.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And you empower them.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, I was going to ask you another question with respect to the business side of,
Sure.
you obviously had the hard skills, or soft skills are hard skills of the technical, you can build a program to train a manager and you go through the 4 steps. The business end of it, like you still have to make money. You
Yep.
still have to figure out the economics of that. Like, did you find that as a struggle? And that kind of ties back into the managers, the CEO who's responsible for looking for talent, but may not be
Yes.
good at that.
That's right.
Right.
I'm very fortunate that my dad had run his own business for 10 years, and I watched him go from being well off to losing everything he had.
Oh my God. I not that I love that that happened to your dad, but I think that wasn't what I was expecting you to say.
No.
But it's so important.
Yeah.
Like you just learned one of the most important things,
Yes.
and it's okay
Yep.
to have that
Yep.
happened.
And
right?
thank God he made those mistakes.
Yes.
Or, and so I was never one of those people that always aspired to having my own business. Why would I?
Well, 'cause you saw the
That's
struggle.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in those early days, my elder sister, Kathy, who's actually a surgeon, nothing to do with business at all, but has an incredible business mind. When I came to her and we sat with all my ideas, which were all scattered at that time, she saw it very clearly as
Yeah.
4 parts. And then she said, how are you going to price this? And I told her what I thought. And she said, oh, double that. And I said, Kathy, for goodness sake, what do you know about business? She said, I know that that's not enough, not for your experience. And I remember in England, I then had to do courses on knowing how to file my taxes,
Yes.
how some basic marketing, and they were offered through the council, so it's very nominal fee. One of them was if you did all these 4 short courses in person, then you would get a mentor who was roughly in your field. So I had this gentleman who was, he's probably really old, like 60. I wasn't, right?
Yeah.
But he came and he met with me in my home office, and I shared, he said, how much are you thinking of charging? And I said, £1,200 for the day. This was back in the year 2000. And he said, £1,200. You'll never get that. And I looked at him and said, why is that? And he said, well, I've been in this business for this long and I charge £700. And I remember looking him in the eye and thinking, I didn't say it out loud, thank God, but I remember thinking, yeah, you're not the mentor for me. And I just knew it. I thought, I'm not comparing myself to you. I'm sorry. And you're not helping me with this side of things. So, and my rates were £1,200 per day. And the only time I ever discounted that was on my first client, who the day before the training said, I'm not sure if we're going to go ahead with it. I was like,
no,
I could do it for £800. And she said, oh, great.
Done.
I just needed one under my belt.
Yeah.
That was, I'm very transparent. We're very transparent about what we charge and that we're worth it.
Yeah.
And we say to people, we would never discount because then no one knows what you're charging. Are you doing a special deal?
Well, and
We
it
just make sure to
devalues
give
your
more value.
product.
Right.
And I think that your identification of, and that's the other thing too in business, is making sure you're getting the advice from the right people.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
like don't go for business advice to your accountant unless
Right.
you know he's a good business person.
That's right.
He could be a great accountant, but
Yeah.
not very good at business. And this mentor obviously set up a limiting view,
Yes.
right? When you're saying, here's the value I'm going to bring to the organization. And that $1,000, well, I know this from my personal experience dealing with you, the value of that fee,
Right.
you get back, if you implement it and exercise it correctly,
Right.
you get 5, 10, 15, 20 times back, and it's ingrained in your culture. So
Lovely.
then you get to pass that forward. So
And we always want to leave our clients, we always do leave our clients with the templates. So
yeah.
we also have, so we do the development and training of leaders and colleagues as well, but we also have operational support. And that's where myself, Jen, Takashi, Chef Takashi will go in and work alongside leaders in the operation. So that's on a per hour basis, not a long contract, just really accessible. And that's where we work along with the leader to help them in the day-to-day with what they're doing to make their processes better. But at the end of that, for example, we're working with Oak Bay Beach Hotel. We've helped them in the heart of house in the kitchen. We've helped them with the banquet area. Now we're working with the food and beverage areas. And at the end of, or every month, I hand over a stick to the general manager where all the templates of what we shared with all the leaders, she also has a copy too, just for security.
Yeah.
We're being transparent about things, and these are always shared as Word documents or Excel so that they're not PDFs that, the idea is to make them templates.
Registered,
That's
trademark,
right.
protected.
They're live
you can't open
documents.
it.
We want Big Wheel
Organic.
Burger to be using those onboarding checklists forever. And also, any of our clients, we always say, we are now connected. You can reach out to me forever and anyone on the team to say, remember we talked about this checklist, or do you have a template for? That's what we love. We love to connect.
Yeah.
And that's something we always, everybody has my email address and my phone number. So, and I love it when they go, you probably don't remember me, but I'm like, of course I remember you, Alice. For heaven's sakes.
Now, your program is a 12-person program typically, right?
Up to 12 people, yeah.
Up to 12 people. So a small organization like myself who doesn't have a team of 12 people
That's
that
right.
I would want to put through that program, I might have 12 people that could use the help.
Sure.
But because it's cost prohibitive
You
for
for sure need to have 12 people that need the help.
Really?
I probably have 1,000 people that need the help.
I know, but I don't have that much of a team that leads, right? So how does a company like mine get involved and get the help that I need through your program if I don't have the 12 people?
So we have collaborative hospitality sessions. So every so often, when we hear from people like, oh, I have 1 or 2 people, that's when so for example, the brilliant chef Castro Boateng, House of
Castro's
Boateng.
amazing.
Yeah, he has a leader that he would love to be developed and to go through the 4-part training, but he doesn't have 12 leaders.
Yeah.
Absolutely great. So what we have done is, again, we've done it before and we'll continue to do them periodically, is we have the 4-part development leadership starting in the off season for our industry, which is, it starts in November, and there'll be one a month for 4 months. But this one is open to anybody in hospitality and tourism to send 1, 2, or 3 people, however many they want, and they just pay for that seat.
Is
They
that
only
fairly
pay.
new? That
No, we
or have you been
actually,
doing that for a little while?
I actually started it during the pandemic.
Okay.
Oh,
Because
amazing.
yes, because I was in contact with all of our clients, every single one of them. I called every single one within 3 days of it locking down to say, how can I help? What can we do together? And then we just kept in touch. And then so many of them who did have 12 leaders didn't have 12 leaders, but they had that 1 or 2 leaders.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, let's do this differently. So I had done it a few times in England before, not because of a pandemic, and I thought, oh, let's use that model and see if it works. And it worked. We had, like I say, people from Prince of Wales, Eagle Wing, Parkside Hotel, all around the table. So 12 different properties who synergize, recognize that as different as the companies are, we all have we all have clients. We all, whether we call them guests, students, or otherwise, we all have team members, colleagues, whatever we call them, team. And we all have guests that we need to ensure, and then we all need to make financial profit. So those are the 3 pillars we always talk about and encourage our clients to measure as well in whatever way they can, as cheap as a Survey Monkey, and again, we'll share that. But we encourage people to look at those 3 measurements as their success pillars. We can't put the guests ahead of the team, but we can't put either of those ahead making money.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
but it's interesting. You mentioned the clients that you use, and it struck me. Thinking about, they're all really well-run brands in our area. They're leaders, and it's not like those people need to connect those dots. Like doing that type of work that you talk about doing, and having a company that's willing to pay for that and to put people through that is how you get those good brands and those good, like thinking like that.
Right.
I think.
And when you think about good brands, we tend to think about the recognizable ones,
Yeah.
the larger ones. But our customer base is made up of the House of Botangs, the Shelter and Shed restaurants in Tofino, Kingfisher Resort. So it doesn't have to be a big brand. In fact, often the big brands have their own trainers. They would still have us in to do keynote speaking or one day. But honestly, we're made up of such a range of clients. And we love that variety because every time we work with clients, because of our approach, we always do a mystery guest. So we have a process with how. So as you probably remember from when I worked with Big Wheel Burger and Zambri's, is before. So when we hear from an owner of a restaurant that, okay, for example, Shelter and Shed, Jay says he has this vision. What can we do? I say, great. Don't tell me anymore. Thank you. I've heard your vision. We come in, and again with Takanai at a table with Chef Takashi Ito and myself at a table, that's like 90 years of food and beverage experience right there. And we literally come in with fresh eyes to have a customer experience, a guest experience with whatever it is, whether it's Shed, which is a quick burger and beer and great music, or Shelter, a little bit more elegant on the water. But we come in and we have those experiences at all your properties. They had Pizza Moto at the time. So we'll come in and have those experiences, and we document everything we experienced, the good, bad, and the ugly. And that's okay, because we don't know what your standards are yet. We haven't got in with you yet. Right. So we give you that report, and then you can do with it what you like. We obviously have a suggestion of what you do. Then we meet with the leaders, all the leaders that we'll be developing, and we find out from them their background, what have been their successes and their challenges, because often they know what they need to do, or they have some great clues. So we definitely tap into that. So with the vision of the owner, the mystery guest experience, and then meeting with all the leaders, that's before we've even trained anybody. Then we tailor make the training to be absolutely tailor-made for Big Wheel Burger or Shelter and Shed restaurants. Then it's so much then they don't need to translate what we're saying. It's not off the
that's
shelf.
the key.
For you, how long does that take to make that translation? Because
No, it takes a while.
that must be a huge part of your job.
Yes, it is, but it's a worthwhile step. You know, without it, we would just be too generic, and that's not what we are. We all come from operations. None of us are academic. Yes, I taught at Royal Roads for 3 years, but honestly, I think to that point, I was the first person who ever taught there who didn't have a degree. You know, and nor did I want one. Sorry, Roberts. I didn't, and I don't have one still.
Yeah. No.
But that's what we bring that makes us really, really relatable. You know, when someone talks about, you know, flipping a room at 2:00 in the morning, a banquet room, or, you know, Christmas Day when you've got those 3 sick calls, or how do you manage a door? We've all been in those situations. Or how do we change a menu in the kitchen? You know, so from operational, that's really great. You know, we had a client that phoned once. It was 7th of July. I'll never forget it. And she said, I'm about to close the doors of my housekeeping. I can't do this. It's all falling apart. And this was a hotel. And you can't close the doors of the housekeeping. They're closing the doors of the hotel. So, and that was, in the end, it was 7 weeks of me going in and doing 3 half days a week for 7 weeks to put in the correct processes, diagnose what was wrong, but then help them, but not from I'm telling you what to do, but working alongside the executive housekeeper and the supervisors, being transparent with the team what I'm doing there. And then together we're making the changes. But most importantly, that executive housekeeper, the supervisors, the general manager and the resident manager now have the template of this is how you're going to sustain it.
Yeah.
And to this day, that department runs so smoothly, and it's the largest department in the hotel. So that's why those processes, if you're smart, like you have been with Big Wheel Burger, you take those templates and you maximize. It's not just a one-day session. You maximize what you've learned and how this can improve my business.
Well, it's amazing that they're tailored to your specific business, because I've read, like everyone, lots of books on how to improve business.
Yes.
But it talks about business or the restaurant industry. Well, it's like, well, I'm a coffee shop with my own special needs.
That's right.
And as much as these books and documentaries can help you understand what's going on, they don't give you any actionable things that you can do that relate directly to what you need.
Well, and they have to work in your culture.
Yeah.
I think that's the big connection. And when you have a custom built program that's based on your culture, because every culture is different.
That's right.
You may have like you said, there's no one answer that covers all of it.
No.
Then you actually can say, hey, this is how my culture works.
Yeah.
And the cultures change. Yeah. But if you have that practices and then you create it in the culture and you've got the different layers of management and people that can carry that forward, then you get the real value. I mean, getting something that you can't relate to, that the people can't relate to, and that's kind of a book example.
Yes, and when we moved as a family to Canada in 2008, and coming here under a work permit was perfect. So I sold the business in England, and we moved here, and I knew that for me to be able to relaunch Blue Mountain Solutions, I felt it was the right thing to do, to go into industry here in Canada, because I thought, I really personally, I could not comfortably authentically stand in front of people, coach them in leadership, customer service, when I hadn't worked a day in my life in Canada. So there I was at the age of 40, took a step down to being food and beverage manager. Yes, it was the Empress, but it was definitely a step down for me.
Exactly.
I've been general manager with Sandals, and working with 6 outlets, 100 highly unionized employees in an austere building, and then of course the recession hit, and we got down and dirty and got it done. It was a brilliant 3.5 years with that company. But then I moved at Laurel Point, very different, and then to Swans as general manager of Swans. So
I didn't know that you were general manager.
Oh yeah, so that was 8 years in industry.
Yeah,
and it's at that time I thought, now I feel like, and of course I haven't worked outside of Victoria, but at least it gave me some Canadian experience, and that's when I relaunched the company. So
That's
9 years
amazing, and for me, it speaks to putting your time in, obviously, and making sure you understand. That's what you do at Blue Mountain is you put your time and understand what that company's doing,
Yes.
and what their strengths are and weaknesses, and what they need, which is unique.
Yeah.
Which you could have only gotten the experience in Canada by
Right.
working at the various different things and seeing what the union environment's like, seeing
Yes, seeing what the independence
like,
seeing
and
what
work
one that's
ethics
owned by
and-
UVic. It's
Yeah.
very, very different.
Yeah.
Three, yeah.
And that ability to be so diverse within the industry, and all your experience feels like it is very industry, like hospitality industry. But
Yeah.
but I know that your company leads and creates leaders in other industries.
Yes, we do, and that's
How does that work? for
yeah.
you?
So, for example, the 4-part collaborative one that we're doing, that's for anyone in hospitality and tourism. We decided to label it that because we're attracting 12 people around the table, and we want them to have a common thread through that. So that's different. However, in general, and this came out of the pandemic. It's going into the pandemic. We'd never advertised. We just had an abundance of business, and it was lovely. And it was definitely like 90% hospitality. And then, of course, with the pandemic hitting us so hard in our industry, that's when we thought, what we have actually is valid to all industries. And it was a property management company that came forward and said, hey, we know what you do through hospitality because other people you've developed. Would you consider doing it for my company? And I said, yes, absolutely. And I really had to break out of my comfort zone because
I'd figure out how that would work.
yeah, and I was so used to being quite proud of the experiences I had, but of course they wouldn't be relevant.
Yeah.
Nor was I going to say I was an expert in property management, for example. But we all realized that then the strength of what we had was really, it's your people, it's your clients, and it's making money. Those three things just came back out as, so during those few years, after 2020 to 2023, we had more business through supermarkets and property management than and engineering companies because those are the ones who are still going and thriving. In fact, Country Grocer.
Well, and building leaders, because as their businesses are growing, they need leaders.
Yeah.
And I think building leaders is universal.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Those
ubiquitous.
talents.
Totally.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter about the subject.
Yeah,
And
and
even
one-
the hospitality end of it too, because I think the idea that we're just hospitality focused to our customers, we
Right.
need to be hospitality focused to each other,
Yes.
right?
Well,
Yes.
you know what I say? I say hospitality is like Buddhism.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in some ways, I think that for Buddhism and hospitality, you practice your Buddhism so that not to become a better Buddhist, but to become a better whatever else it is that you do in your life.
Okay.
And
I
hospitality is something that you practice or you work at, and it makes you better at whatever else you do in your life.
Yeah.
And so teaching hospitality
Yeah.
people to be leaders and coming from that hospitality background, having that so entrenched in you must make you really good
Yeah.
at everything else you touch must really benefit from your depth of knowledge of hospitality.
I think that's one of the biggest things that we recognized having gone into other industries is I have to say hospitality leaders are rock stars. Yeah. They have to know everything from here to there. They have to know HR, sales, developing leaders, operations themselves, breaking down things.
Conflict resolution.
Interviewing, having different... And then when we go into different companies, I'm like, oh, right.
Yeah.
That's right. They close the door at 5 o'clock and then they reopen at 9 on a Monday. What a concept. and oh no, that's not what we do. That goes to a lawyer or that goes to, and I'm always like, oh, wow. Because I honestly feel that someone who's had hospitality leadership experience is a rock star. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I mean by comparing it to Buddhism. I mean, maybe it's a cheeky reference, but still, I mean, the more you practice Buddhism, the better you are at whatever it is that you do. And I strongly believe, and I tell that to my kids often, like just like it doesn't matter if you're in hospitality, you do it for a while, you learn the skills, you feel what that's like, and then go do anything else. It'll make you a better teacher, it'll make you a better lawyer, it'll make you a better anything.
Well, I think that's the sort of progress of, I mean, anybody that's looking to hire people, a lot of people's first jobs are in hospitality, whether it be at McDonald's or Big Wheel or, 2% Jazz or wherever. But to have that baseline, and, you think, I always used to hear about how you always want to hire somebody that worked at McDonald's because of the structure and the training process and, the systems. It teaches them a certain way to learn and to process. And as we've progressed, in my mind, by empowering our staff and having them part of the decision making, sharing the 30,000-foot view with them, they're actually learning traits of leadership. That when they go on to their next job or next career. I want to build, a career in hospitality, and I wanted to get back to where people viewed it as a profession. And I think through, your assistance and through that mindset, we can do it. Obviously, wages are a part of that. They have to be able to afford to live in the city they're in.
Absolutely. And that's why I love the Bread and Butter Collective for sure, and why we all started this, why we all got together in the first place. It's good. If that's what came out of this, I'm okay with it.
I think it's it will build some strength. I mean, it's still the challenge. Like, I know, like, where we started and where we are now, we're kind of flat. Like, on the profit side, everybody's making 20 to 30% more on the wage side, and we're still kind of making the same profit at the end of the day. I think there's still more work to be done to try to make sure that us as entrepreneurs and business people and risk takers, I guess, are making enough that they can replace their equipment and that they can actually have some balance thrive. And I think that's one of the more challenging things in our industry, which I think by having, your company involved, and also the willingness from our side to make that investment in the better training and the better systems will reap benefits. But just changing the cultural mindset of, you're charging too much for this, or that's that, or, I mean, we often get a little bit browbeaten by certain perceptions, I think, as far as, how much that burger costs, or how much that cup of coffee costs, or how much that hotel stay is. And without understanding, this is a business. It's no different than, an accounting firm or, a property management company.
That's right.
Why are they okay with making charging 10, 20% or whatever? But yet we're feeding, sustaining people. It's the most, pure undertakings ever. And trying to ease people's stress and giving the quality of life and having those breaking bread, moments, opportunities, which are just amazing. This is where life happens, where conversations happen, where you learn about your child, where you learn about your cousin, where you make new friends. But you can't make money.
Right.
It's just like,
I disagree. And that's why I'm so proud that I am a hospitality professional, and often I hear at the end of whether I do a keynote speaking for BCHA, the BC Hotel Association, or Able BC, which is the beverage licensing, where, I will have probably normally 2 people, or Cook's Camp, 2 people that will come to me after and say, what's really great is you actually just said you love being in hospitality. I'm like, what? I am born and bred in this industry, and I love it. And
it's amazing.
And I've had the pleasure of working it in 4 different countries. And, and I absolutely love the way it was different in 4 different countries, the way I have changed over. I love the fact that it's allowed me to travel and what I've learned. I think hospitality is brilliant.
Yeah, it sure is. When I was spending quite a bit of time at the hospital with my dad this last year, and granted, we talked about that. Nursing staff has like their challenges for sure, but the one nurse that my dad liked best, that I liked best, that was just so friendly and nice, I ended up talking to her. It turns out there was her part-time job. Her other job is at the Barden Banker.
Wow.
And she'd been in hospitality. And I'm like, hospitality just makes you a better whatever else it is.
It does.
And I told her that.
I agree.
She agreed.
Well, we talked about that in we had a hospitality episode, and we talked about the value of hospitality in other industries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, we touched on it today.
Oh, no
too.
wonder I feel
And my
so
favorite book,
upbeat.
Unreasonable Hospitality.
Yes,
Oh,
yeah.
I just,
Yeah.
I read that book and I kind of want to rub it on me as
Yeah.
I read it. And
Yeah.
I keep going back to it. And it's just brilliant because, you know, and we toyed with the idea of saying we bring hospitality to your company when we were looking at other companies. And
Yeah.
we didn't go that way. But that's honestly how we feel, because any company will benefit from understanding hospitality
Yeah,
and
totally.
what we bring to the table. Any company, hands down, because again, often when we go into companies and we're like, oh, you don't do that, you don't, okay, so this is, and they're like, wow, that's profound. And it's actually not profound for us in hospitality,
it's
what
like-
I'm speaking of. Yeah, you know,
You're,
it's so
what?
it's from hospitality
Yeah.
we know what we're doing.
It just
Yeah.
feels very human.
Yeah, that's right. It's very human. It's very authentic. It's very connection driven.
Mm-hmm.
It's what we do, and we love it. Yeah.
Well, that's the beauty of what we do, is that connection and making those connections, and that's what keeps us here. And that's where the profit comes too. Like in saying that, you know, like we're obviously not a very profitable industry, but there's, you know, there's more to business than dollar profit from feeling good, profit from, you know, providing awesome food
Yes.
or drinks or experiences is good. And it's so underrated when you think, oh, well, what did I get at the end of the day?
Right.
It's like, well, my whole day was filled with beauty
Yeah.
and conversations
Yes.
and all this stuff and changing that
that's-
narrative, right?
When we do, whether it's operational support, we want to help. We want to know what your finances are and how we can make a difference. And
Yeah.
whether that's setting up a pretty basic apprentice program. And Big Wheel does it so well with the mountain.
Yeah.
You know, at each level, this is where you are, whether you're heart of house or front of house. But helping them build within there. And that's what we've been doing the last 4 years, because we weren't able to find chefs from outside to hire. So we were building them within kitchens and helping clients to figure out how to do that. And they were like, oh, I see, we could do, yes. I mean, I know now that we're not in a staffing crisis, we're just in a staffing shortage. So things have eased off a lot. But back then we were like, we've got to see what we can do. And we were adapting menus to the people that we had on our team. And
Yeah.
then you had to be smart not to. Otherwise, you know, we talk about sustainability. We always, when we use that word, we're talking about sustainability of the business, sustainability of your people, before we start talking about plastics, which are really important. But what about is this sustainable for your team? Whatever you have in mind, you know, what hours are we looking at? You know, that we've got to make sure that people are going to be wanting to do this and performing at their best. You know, I remember once saying to a chef who I was coaching, and he was saying, this is what I'm going to do, and this is the change I'm going to make with my 2 sous chefs. And I said, and I just looked at him and I said, when last have you had 2 days off in a row? And he looked at me and he snapped back. This has nothing to do with it. I'm just asking, do you agree with this change? And I said, can I ask a question before I answer the question? And he said, it's been a very busy 6 months. La, 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 la. Okay, so how would it be 6 months? Yes, about that. I said, okay, I think we need to have this conversation when you've had 2 sets of 2 days off in a row. And he was quite cross with me because I wouldn't commit to it.
Yeah.
And literally 3 weeks later, because it took him a week to sort it out. And when we had that conversation, he didn't even talk about it. I said, oh, no, hold on. What about the sous chef? It wasn't an issue. He wasn't in the right mindset.
Yeah.
He was so swamped, and underneath it, it was everybody else's problem. And he wasn't able to see it. He was under it so deep. Right. So he needed to look after himself in this particular situation before he was able to help anybody else. And
There's a lot to be said for self-care in every industry.
yes. I mean, I know that I have no road rage at all. I don't shout and scream at the...
I couldn't even imagine you.
However,
I'd like to see it.
However, my Jamaican comes out.
Yeah. What? No horn honking?
Yeah. However, I do know that I start to think, oh, why are they driving like that? Only when I'm running late.
Right. Yes.
I never have
yes,
it when I'm
right.
not running late.
Yeah.
So whose fault is that really?
Exactly.
It's totally mine.
Yeah.
And I laugh at myself every time I think, come on. And I think, it's because
it's my
I've
fault.
left it too close. Yeah.
Yeah, I
so
think
that's self-awareness, right?
It is. I think that driving in Victoria is a full-time exercise in patience.
Yes,
Yes,
but
yeah, like every time
it's
it's
good to
like-
practice.
It
My
is.
daughter
You know,
says
like
that, yeah.
I'm a very bad student myself when it comes to. I don't road rage, but I get road frustration.
Right.
Well, you've got a car big enough you can just drive over the.
Oh
front of
yeah, yeah.
you,
It's
right?
just like one of those big monster trucks. No,
Yeah, right.
it's not one of those.
Yeah.
It's
But
biofueled.
I also am like, okay, well, I have the number for a city councilor. I could maybe talk to them about what's going on
Yeah.
here or there. I think kind of bigger picture, and then I get even more frustrated. So I don't worry about the drivers. I worry about the institutions that are, road blocking and
Right.
giving permits to do work, and then you turn a corner and there's another guy that got a permit to do work over there, and you're like, who would make that decision?
If you got counselors' numbers in your pocket, can you ask them about night work? Like, can they just not switch all the construction to nighttime?
They got to pay overtime. It's really hard to change their policies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, we find that sometimes when we're developing a team, particularly if they've had a particularly rough period for whatever reason, that when we come around the table and there's 12 of us, or 12 of them, and they'll be talking about things that are out of their circle of control. So, we're talking about, okay, hold on. You have certain things you can control, certain things you can influence. And then, so we hear you. However, how can you impact that? What can you
Yeah.
do about that? No
Well,
different.
there's so much time wasted on things you cannot control.
Yeah.
And
And
discussion.
energy.
And energy. When you're like,
and
okay, let's talk about
positivity.
what we can control. Because we have that we just had one of our bi-weekly managers or senior team meetings.
Yeah.
And I find I get quickly sort of frustrated when we talk about, spend a lot of time on stuff that we can't
Right,
control. Like we're
right.
just like, it's almost whimsical.
Yeah.
Or, well, I wish this was different. I wish that was different. It's like, well, it's not different
Yeah.
and we can't control that.
And these are the
Yeah.
rules of the game,
Yeah.
if you like.
Yeah. So let's focus on how we're going to benefit from it or learn from
Yeah.
it or execute in a way that we can
Yeah.
impact
And,
change.
Jennifer is the trainer that does the most training apart from me. And, she will use examples to help people really get it. And, the example we use is, having a child that needs medical concern. Oh, I can sit and wallow in
Yeah.
poor thing. What are we going to do? Poor me. Why?
What does the
us?
future look
Da-da-da-da.
like?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. And that stuff is out of what is totally in my circle of control is I'm going to make sure we're all really well fed. I'm going to make sure that we all sleep well. And I'm going to try with all of my might to raise a confident human being here, because anything can happen to any of us.
Yeah.
But we know we've got a big medical concern here. And if I can raise this human being to be confident with her condition, then
Yeah.
I do have some control over that. Whatever else, I can't worry about that, So,
Yeah. And you're going to cross those bridges and make those decisions when they come.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of wasted worrying about all those outcomes,
Yeah.
I find. But it's hard.
Drive you mad or miserable, one of the two.
Well, and it's hard too because a lot of people live in those zones
Yeah.
rather than just living in the reality of what can I change?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's easier to live in those zones where you can't control it because there's no expectation that you can do anything about
Right.
it. So you kind of get
That's
off
true.
scot-free,
You're right,
right?
Sam.
But
Because-
well, you get off scot free, but it allows you to not actually execute.
Yeah.
Because you're
Yes.
just in this world of, well, I can't control that. Oh,
Yeah.
well,
Yes.
I guess
You
I won't
can't
even bother.
execute.
Yeah.
But without even looking at, well, what can you control?
Yes.
Like, how can you affect change? Because I remember when I was in learning how to walk again.
Mm-hmm.
And
Learning how to walk again.
yeah, I had an accident where I was quadriplegic and I gradually slowly came back.
Ooh.
Totally different story.
Okay.
Another episode. I think I've talked about it on the
I
on
think
our
we've talked about
podcast
it.
before.
Wow.
But
Must have
I
missed
was
that.
like, what do I do today?
Yeah.
Like I'm my outlook is grim, thinking that.
Yes.
I was making small progress, but I was like, what can I do today? And I thought, well, all you can do is stand.
Wow.
And all I can do is take that first step. And then tomorrow I'll take 2 steps, hopefully, or a step and a half. And then just worry. And that's like the purest comparison I can make for a feeling
It
of
is.
like just, okay, 1 step at a time.
Yeah.
By the time I left, I was able to walk 1.5 blocks to 2 blocks.
Wow.
But the theory of like not worrying if I was going to run a
No,
marathon.
Just standing.
Yeah, let's stand first. Let's
First.
walk. Let's, put my pants on.
Yeah.
Let's, these various things that people take very for granted.
Yes.
But it's a really good lesson that when I'm in the weeds and you get caught up with crap that you can't control and don't know a path forward, sometimes it's just focusing on what's right in front of you right now. Like maybe I clean my desk and that can help me clear my mind. And then maybe I like,
write a list.
Write a list.
That's
and
right.
then talk to a subordinate or a coworker or a partner. Maybe we should look at doing some of these things. How do we get forward? Just one step at a time.
Yes.
And then not worrying about the ramifications down low. And for me, poker is a very good thing about that too, because I can't control the cards.
Right.
All I can control is how I process that. And I can't worry about the outcomes. I could have the best hand. I could be a 98% favorite and then lose by the river. And they're like, well, you lost. It doesn't matter. I'm like, yeah, but I was 98% favorite. I can live with, I was a 98% favorite. Or it could be like, okay, well, I played that hand as best I could. I can't control the outcomes. Let's move on to the next hand.
Right.
Right. And just letting all that stuff go rather than living in it.
Yes.
You know,
and letting it consume you.
Letting it consume you. What is as we wrap up, what does your next sort of 6 months look like? Do you see some big challenges in the economy? Do you see some opportunities? What do you, especially in the southern Vancouver Island?
Yeah. So majority of our business is in the southern Vancouver Island for sure. We have lots of clients up island, which we love, and we love going to clients. We love the movement. That's a big part of who we are, part of our values. So business looks great. It's a small team. It's 6 of us. 2 work sort of more as associates, and then there's 4 of us in the core of the business, if you like. And it looks fantastic, honestly. The clients keep coming in. They're really happy with what we do. I think the longer you're in business too, and you'll both know this, is you get very clear on what you are, and that helps to attract and align people who are aligned with your values. They still need your help, and that's what we're there for, But if honestly, we get our kicks from helping people grow. We're passionate about people and them growing. So it's not about us coming in and telling you what to do. It's about us coming in, hearing where you are, opening up our toolbox and saying, we've got these tools. We think these would be useful. What do you think? And then whichever they choose, they'll commit to doing that change, and we'll support them doing it. We don't change their businesses for them. We help them do it so that they are the ones who are in control, and they just use us as support.
And they've got the ownership of it.
Yeah.
It's like a really good psychologist.
Yeah.
They don't tell you how to fix yourself. Right. You work it, you talk through it yourself, and you come up with the ideas, and you own it, and you make those discoveries, which I think is important. Which is going to bring me, as we wrap up, I want to ask this question. So this would be a question that one of our listeners who has a business or something may be thinking to themselves. Through all the coaching we've done, the work we've done with you in the past, we've come up with our we believe statements as a company. We want to implement them. We've got a beautiful poster. We've taken one of those we believe statements, which is our hospitality first, and we built a sort of program of what that looks like. And we've been working on it for like the last year, and our managers are there. We've also done a manager training program based on a book series called Managing People, I believe. Or no, not Managing People. That's one of the courses. Essential Manager series, which I really like.
Great.
And it's pictures. So we're going to be implementing these programs, all this stuff, but I maybe need some advice on how to do it effectively.
Great.
And looking at the content that we've created.
Yep.
I had an amazing intern this summer who basically built out sort of a question, like a course questionnaire, which I thought was great. But can we sit down? Can we figure out something so you can help and say, hey, this is your best way to be able to implement it?
Oh, yes.
Here's maybe you could add this on to make it a little bit more polished.
Absolutely. Would
so
love
I want to, I want to follow up with you to do that.
Love to. Love to. We love Big Will Burger. We love Zambries, honestly, and the good you're doing in the community. You understand what being a community leader is. So I'd love to. Absolutely.
Okay. We'll take this offline.
Great.
So how do people find you who need you? Because there's lots of people who need you. So
Thank you. So Instagram, Blue Mountain Solutions.
Okay.
Just look up Blue Mountain Solutions. On LinkedIn, just my name, Teresa Ito. And that's pretty
I
much.
love your Instagram.
Yeah.
I love your take the steps.
Where will your feet
yeah,
take
where
you
your feet
today?
take you is awesome. It's it's really, really good. And I
And
like the little lessons you give.
Yeah,
or
Blue
little-
Mountain Moments.
Yeah,
Thank
Blue
you.
Mountain Movements
Yeah.
are awesome.
And on the website, I mean, they're on the website. We have many resources there that are free, and you can look at Blue Mountain Moments. What we have is one client who, because every week we come out with a Blue Mountain Moment, and we have so many topics, and we have to pick just one. And what they do is they sit down with their leaders and they watch the Blue Mountain Moment, which is only one minute, and then they switch it off and they go, right, in groups we're going to discuss how we feel, what value this has for us, how we can, did we find it useful, how we're going to implement it. So I have a general manager that does that every week with our Blue Mountain Moments that
amazing.
our team has put together. So
Last
it's fun.
question for you. How did you come up with the name Blue Mountain?
Haha, that's the best question of all.
Yeah.
I know 2% Jazz is amazing coffee here, but Blue Mountain coffee is the finest coffee in the world. And it comes from Jamaica.
Oh, I love it.
So being Jamaican born and raised and having lived there for 20 years of my life, it's definitely home for me. We go back often and we have many clients there, which is
Yeah.
always fun. You should see Tack in the kitchen when they're speaking Jamaican patois, and he's going, what? But Blue Mountain Range is where they grow Blue Mountain coffee. So it was the affiliation of how can I stay true to my roots and talk about something that's of the highest quality, which is, and also the aspiration of climbing. It just seemed to be perfect. So yeah,
It's awesome.
that's where it came from.
Teresa, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. Thank you for being a part of the Bread and Butter Collective.
Thank you.
Let's keep growing our industry
Yes.
and trying to thrive and learn and have fun.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
have
great
fun.
talking to you. Thanks for being an inspiration to leaders in all hospitality.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Kaylin. This was fun.
Thanks.
Thanks,
a lot of
Teresa. Sam,
Kaylin,
remember to be kind.
I'll be kind if you be nice.
I'll try to be nice.
Okay, I'm sure
It's
you'll
really
do
hard
a
for
great
me.
job. Have a great rest
All right,
of your
thanks,
week.
everybody. Have a good week.
Bye.
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 Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, Bunny's Kitchen, Buzz Coffee House, Eagle-Ite, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Eva Schnitzel House, Farmsgate Foods and Catering, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Nikkei Ramen Ya, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Keating Pizza, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, The Nimble Bar Company, Ruth and Dean, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, Spoon's Diner, Truffles-Inspired Catering, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.